You know that classic image of the friendly neighborhood used car lot?
Mm.
The one with the kind of faded signs and a salesperson ready to help you find your next ride.
I think we all have that image in our heads.
Yeah, well, that image might be disappearing faster than we think, especially in inner cities where those small dealerships are facing an uphill battle.
Hmm. Interesting.
So there's this Benzinga article that really caught our attention.
Okay.
It focuses on a Detroit dealership called Sunset Auto Corporation and their struggles with Next Gear Capital.
Next gear.
Yeah, they're a big player in lending for used car dealerships.
Ah, I see where this is going.
It's a situation that really reveals some of the behind-the-scenes stuff in the used car market.
Yeah, the challenges those small independent dealerships face.
Right, exactly.
And what's the article saying? What are the issues they're highlighting?
Well, the accusations from Sunset and their lawyers are pretty concerning.
Oh,
They claim Nextgear's performance manager was involved in some seriously questionable stuff, like unauthorized withdrawals from the dealership's account.
wow.
Yeah, totaling over $255,000.
That's a lot of money.
It is, and what makes this case even more complex is the whole context.
What do you mean?
You have these smaller dealerships, often serving communities that don't have easy access to traditional financing.
Right.
So they rely a lot on lenders like Nextgear to keep their businesses going.
Yeah, I could see how that creates a tricky power dynamic.
Absolutely. And Sunset, which is a black-owned dealership, claims the performance manager hit them with excessive overdraft fees. And then, to make matters worse, allegedly sent racially charged messages and fostered a hostile work environment.
That's awful.
It's wild. The article even says there were threats to lock the dealership's account and take all their inventory.
Really?
Yeah, it makes you wonder how common this is.
Sadly, it's not unique to Sunset. I've seen similar accusations against Nextgear and other big lenders.
It's frustrating because these smaller dealerships often lack the resources to fight back.
Absolutely, they're in a tough spot.
And it gets even worse. The allegations go beyond just financial manipulation.
Oh, no.
Sunset says the performance manager allegedly tried to set fire to vehicles.
What?
Yeah, and even orchestrated the theft of several cars, including a 2018 Cadillac and a 2021 Chevrolet Blazer.
That's crazy.
I know, it's hard to believe this is happening.
Makes you question corporate responsibility.
Right. How are these companies overseeing their employees, especially those with so much power over smaller businesses?
Yeah, where are the checks and balances?
So now Sunset is taking legal action against Nextgear.
Good for them.
They're seeking financial reimbursement and administrative action against that performance manager.
It's a bold move going up against a giant like Nextgear.
It is, but
Mhm.
their story points to a much bigger issue in the used car industry.
Absolutely. And this is about way more than just one dealership in Detroit.
Exactly. The decline of the small used car lot has huge implications for consumers.
Especially in those underserved communities that rely on them.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of take for granted that we can just go to a dealership and find a car, but what happens if these smaller ones keep disappearing?
That's the question we need to explore.
It is. This case is shocking, but it might just be the tip of the iceberg.
Forcing us to face some uncomfortable truths about how this industry works.
And the potential consequences for everyone.
Right, exactly. This whole situation with Sunset Auto makes you think,
It does.
is this just a one-off or is there something bigger going on here?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's almost too crazy to be an isolated thing, right?
It is.
Unfortunately, the data suggests it's not. The
Ah.
National Independent Automobile Dealers Association.
Okay.
They've got data showing the number of independent used car dealerships.
Mm-hmm.
In the U.S., it's been dropping for years.
Really?
Back in 2010,
Yeah.
there were over 16,000.
Yeah.
By 2020, that number was down to just over 13,000.
That's a big drop. What's causing that?
Well, there are a few things happening.
Like what?
The rise of these huge dealership groups and online car retailers, they're putting the squeeze on smaller places.
Right. It's tough to compete with that.
These big companies, they've got economies of scale
Mm.
and these huge marketing budgets.
The little guys can't match that.
No, they can't.
And I bet those loan terms we talked about are a factor too.
Oh, absolutely.
Like how so?
Imagine you're running a small dealership.
Okay.
You need a loan to buy inventory.
Okay.
Right, set.
Makes sense.
So you go to a lender like Nextgear.
Yeah.
They offer what seems like a decent interest rate.
Your car.
But then you look closer and there's all this fine print.
Uh-oh.
All sorts of fees and rules.
Give me an example.
Things like prepayment penalties,
Mm-hmm.
mandatory arbitration clauses, even the right to change the loan terms whenever they want.
Without notice.
Yeah, without notice.
So even if a dealership avoids the worst stuff like what Sunset went through,
Right.
they can still get trapped by these tricky loan practices,
Exactly. It's a tough situation.
especially for those who might not have the legal help or money to deal with it.
It's a recipe for disaster.
What does this mean for car buyers then? It's especially in those communities that rely on these small dealerships.
It's about more than just having fewer choices.
Okay.
People in underserved communities, they might lose access to affordable, reliable transportation.
That's a big deal.
It is.
It's like a domino effect.
It is.
You can't get to work, you could lose your job,
Right.
no car. Then getting healthcare or groceries becomes so hard.
Yeah. And then what happens?
What do you mean?
Without those small dealerships,
Mm-hmm.
people might feel forced to turn to predatory lenders.
The ones with those high-interest loans and hidden fees.
Exactly. Trapping people in debt.
It feels like a system-wide problem, not just a few bad actors.
Right.
So what can we do? Sunset wants more transparency and accountability.
They're not the only ones.
Really?
A lot of advocates are pushing for tougher rules on these big lenders.
Like what kind of rules?
Clearer loan terms, limits on fees, and more oversight.
To stop those predatory practices.
Exactly.
What about us, the consumers?
Supporting local businesses is huge.
Oh,
Choosing to buy from a small dealership if you can, it really matters.
you're not just buying a car, you're supporting a whole community.
Exactly.
Never thought about it that way.
Every dollar you spend, it's a vote for the kind of world you want.
That's a good point.
It's not just individual choices either.
What else can we do?
Talk to your elected officials. Push for policies that protect small businesses.
Makes sense.
Policies that promote responsible lending.
It's easy to feel helpless going up against huge corporations.
I know.
But it sounds like we can make a difference if we work together.
Absolutely, we can.
Remind me how?
These companies and politicians, they listen when enough people speak up.
Demand change.
Right, we've seen it work before.
It can happen again.
Yes, it can.
This is a lot to process. Who knew buying a used car was connected to so many things?
It's all connected.
It is. We need to be informed and engaged, not just going through the motions.
That's right.
All right, listeners. In the last part of this deep dive, we'll explore some solutions
Sounds good.
and leave you with some things to think about how you can make a difference. We've talked about a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
It's kind of crazy to think about how buying a used car, something so normal, can bring up all these bigger issues.
Yeah, it's easy to just focus on the car itself, right? But this
Right.
deep dive, it's like we've popped open the hood and seen all the gears turning in this industry.
And what we found isn't always pretty.
Definitely not.
We've seen how big companies can misuse their power.
And how those smaller dealerships, they're barely hanging on.
But it's not all bad news, right?
Well, not at all.
We've also talked about some things that could help,
Like what?
like tougher rules for lenders,
Yes.
more transparency about those loan terms,
Absolutely.
and how we, as consumers, have the power to choose where we spend our money.
That's a big one.
I think what really stuck with me is that idea that every time we buy something, it's like a vote.
A vote for what?
A vote for the kind of world we want to live in.
You're not just getting a product or service.
Yeah.
You're saying, this is the kind of business I want to support.
Supporting local businesses, we're investing in our communities and making things fairer.
It's a reminder that we're not just along for the ride.
Yeah.
We can actually steer things in a better direction.
And that's pretty powerful.
It is.
It's inspiring to see businesses like Sunset Auto taking a stand.
Especially when they're up against such huge challenges.
They're fighting for what's right.
They're like a reminder that even the little guy can make a difference.
Yeah.
Their story shows us that we should support those businesses that share our values.
And that we should push for policies that protect the vulnerable.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key things our listeners should remember?
First, remember that when small independent businesses disappear, there's a much wider impact.
It's not just about losing jobs or choices.
It affects our communities, our economy, everything. Second, stay informed about the businesses you deal with.
Especially those that handle a lot of money, like lenders.
Ask questions, read the fine print, don't be afraid to speak up if something seems unfair.
Good advice.
And finally, remember that your choices matter.
Every choice we make has an impact.
Supporting local businesses, pushing for policy changes, having these conversations, it all adds up.
It's a reminder that even small actions can make a difference.
They can.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Keep asking those questions, keep learning, and keep pushing for a better world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.